Cool, Nons. We're going to start just so that time doesn't run away with us, and just for the ladies that have joined us on time. I think let's just get into it, and then people can join us. So yeah, let's kick it off, guys. Good evening, everybody who is on the call. Thank you so much for joining the Subsessions series and conversation today with another dope Black girl. I'm very excited for the lady who is joining us today, and I'm sure you guys are as well if you know who she is. I just want to quickly go through some ground rules for anybody who hasn't been on the session before. You just got to keep your mic muted just throughout the session, just for the first sort of 30 minutes while we have Noni kind of sharing some insights with us. And then at the latter part, you'll be able to raise your hand, unmute yourself and ask a question, and we can engage together. The last point, the session is being recorded just for my own content use later, and for anybody who'd like to catch up on this session as well. So we just respect each other, respect each other's opinions, and just give each other time to speak and engage and learn from each other. So welcome, and thank you guys so much for making the time to be here this evening. I would like to introduce my co-host. She is, I'd say, a sister friend, somebody I met while working at Investec. She is also somebody I think who mentored me indirectly in terms of how to navigate my way through the bank. So I'm quite excited that she's here. She is the national chairperson of the Women's Property Network, which is very important because I think the work that you're doing sort of in the property space, and you know how passionate you are about representation of women, is very important. You'll share a bit about your journey with us, but you're the CEO and the founder of Izandla Property, which is also very amazing. Property being a very male-dominant industry, so I can imagine the challenges and lessons that have come with that in your journey, Noni. So welcome, and thank you so much for making the time, my friend.
Thanks so much, Zamo. I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's a really lovely way to reconnect with you. Our journey started a long time ago, and you've transcended into a different space in your life, and it's fantastic to see you showing up like this. I'm really grateful to participate in your initiative, and equally proud of what you've done, and just the work that you're doing in helping bring knowledge in many different fields and respects to young professionals. So thank you. Hopefully I can share some nuggets with yourself and your audience that will be of value to them, but equally learn from them. And you said this was an interactive conversation, which is fantastic because these webinars are so one-sided, and you feel like talking to yourself. So I'm really looking forward to engaging with everyone.
For sure, I'm excited. So you know that this is called Subsessions, which has to do with sipping. And now that we're in level 2, no one has an excuse that they should not be sipping. So ladies on the call, could you write in the chat, what are you sipping on and why? And Noni, could you tell us what you're sipping on and why?
This is what I'm sipping on this evening. This is kind of my staple drink for my weekday evenings when I'm having a bit of downtime. And I've been quite good actually, because although I could potentially access my red wine in the last couple of weeks, I tried not to. I did in some instances, but I've been good in the last week or so. So I'm looking forward to having a sip of good wine with everyone.
For sure. I'm having a cider just because I think just during lockdown, you know, I couldn't access this one beverage. So I'm having this now. I'm having it because we've got like wine and we've got other things in here. But cider was the one thing I missed when the alcohol ban was still up. Yeah. So ladies, I see Pulinks drinking brutal fruit after a hectic work day. Oh, that's good. That's a nice energy booster. So yeah, so guys, just keep sending us what you're drinking and just what mood you're in. Would like to sort of get the interaction going just from the beginning. What are you sipping on and why? But we'll kick right into it, Noni. Of course, you know, what else could we talk about besides lockdown? I mean, I guess it seems like the only place to kind of start a conversation. I think when you meet people, the first thing they say to you is like, so how's lockdown been? You know, like that's the first and only thing that can speak to you. So if you could just share, how has 147 days, maybe it's been more, how has lockdown been for you, and more importantly, the impact it had on your work and family?
Sure. It's been an interesting journey. I mean, you've heard so many stories of how people have contended with the last couple of months, and I think a lot of similarities, being shared across the board, particularly with women, with the different roles that we play. So I think for me, what's important in sharing just my experiences, which, like I said, I think are very familiar, or very similar with most people. I think, for me, this lockdown experience, one, has been a significant challenge in many respects. So to paint a bit of a picture, and for me, starting off being at home with, I'd say, a relatively big family, a family of 7, which we're now down to 5 because the other 2 have kind of migrated to different locations. For us, it started off as a bit of an adventure, actually, to be honest with you. Almost like, flip, I'm going to be at home and not have to work and the mad rush, and, I can just breathe and relax and do the things that I've always wanted to do, but not had the time. So, I mean, I think the first 6 weeks kind of rolled out as, a bit of work in the mornings and early afternoons, but you look forward to the late afternoons, because what we do is we'd gather outside as a family and we'd play games. Like, we would play hide and seek, play martini, we would play cricket, and then it was fun, and we never got time to do that. So I've got a blended family, which is interesting at the best of times. And the youngest boys are 7 and 15. And you're always rushing. I mean, you never spend that much time with your kids under these circumstances. And it was really nice to do that. And we finish our days by sharing a fairly decent meal, which I was very happy to put together in the early days around the table. There's also a black Brady Bunch type of scenario. And then I fast forward, I guess, Zamo, into like 4 months, 4.5 months, whatever. And, things started changing very quickly. So increased levels of cabin fever with everybody. Frustration, because I think the reality of, the crisis we are facing was settling in and starting to impact us as a family directly. And the pressure of, managing whatever stresses came with my business, whatever stresses came with my husband's business. He's an entrepreneur, so you can imagine. And then the kids being at home and having to kind of grapple around this homeschooling story. So increased levels of anxiety. So needless to say, the afternoons of fun and playing outside quickly disappeared. And, the meals shared around the dinner table were not of the same standard as they were initially, because actually I just couldn't care.
So you started off with Chef Noni, and then it was like, guys, toasted sandwiches. That's what we're eating.
Listen. People are posting stuff on Instagram, and we're out here just baking away. And
gosh, everyone was baking.
Listen, okay, and it was fun, right? And you thought, flip, I actually do this, and but you thought, no, it's actually not the reality. And I think the last probably 2 or 3 months for us has been challenging in many different respects. And I think of the role that I've had to play in this situation. One, the role of a mother and caregiver, which has meant different things for me during this time. The role of still being a wife, the role of running the business in a highly pressurized environment, the role of being a school teacher, which, I mean, is just...
You're not skilled for.
Listen, okay, if I ever had any aspirations to become any form of educator, those aspirations have gone out the window.
So now you've got more respect for teachers, it seems. Like parents seem to have more respect.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. But equally, like a little bit of resentment, to be honest with you, because I was like, but hang on. I mean, you know, being obligated to teach these kids, because actually, we're not equipped psychologically, that kind of stuff. So,
and
you know.
Paying school fees out here.
Listen, schools are not shy to invoice on time, eh? And then to remind you when you haven't paid on time, and you want to say to them, but hang on, I mean, how about discounts? How about helping parents out during this hard time?
Sure, yeah.
So, you know, I think for me, I suppose the key in having this discussion and assessing just what my experience has been is some of the lessons that I've learned and continuing to learn out of this lockdown. And I think for me, 3 come to mind. Sorry, the other role is co-accountant. So we've had to be very creative with our finances here at home because of the impact, you know.
Everybody, hey?
Yeah, on income and all of that. And I think it's a scary place to be in. And most of the time, we never want to deal with finances. I think generally it's an area of anxiety, and you'd rather assume that things are okay than actually assessing where things are.
Yeah.
So, you know, my husband and I have had to go through that process of having those conversations and actually delving into different line items of this household.
Expenses, yeah.
Where you navigate and where you push and you know, pull. And that has been an interesting process and a challenging one for us as a couple.
I can relate to you.
Yeah, and it's okay, right? Yeah. I mean, this platform, you said we are as candid as possible.
For sure.
Sharing those experiences it provides a certain level of relief because you know, like you're saying, you can attest to just some of those experiences, and I think a lot of us can. But it's okay, right?
It's okay, and we need to share these things together. I mean, like, I think it's only when we kind of then feel like, okay, it's fine, Noni or another couple's going through it. We're trying to figure out if we, you know, should we sell one car? Should we, you know, maybe not have that other random property that's you know, like, I think it's okay to have those conversations only because it's also important for women to actually start owning their finances. But that's like a conversation, But I mean, it's just from your work perspective, sorry, Noni, just from a work perspective as well, how was lockdown sort of impacted you as well? So from being physical, maybe at your on site or at the office, you know, sort of how has lockdown impacted business or work?
So look, we were able to transcend to, you know, remote working and continuing on digital platforms since the start of lockdown. So there was a seamless transition for us as a team. But I think for us, the biggest impact on our business is, and just to provide a bit of color for everyone else in terms of what we do as Izandla. So we own real estate assets primarily in the commercial, retail, and industrial space. And, you know, we then are impacted either way because our tenants operate in many different industries. And our mandate, specifically during this time, is to make sure that tenants continue to pay, but also understanding the reality of affordability and some of the fallout that has happened and what that impact is on our revenue. So, you know, we've had tenants that were deemed non-essential from day dot, weren't able to operate, weren't
like
able.
Restaurants or like?
Yeah, restaurants. So we don't have exposure to restaurants in our retail portfolio, but we do have exposure to clothing retailers.
Sure.
Clothing retailers, food retailers, which, you know, have continued to operate. But clothing retailers that, you know, kind of took a hard stance and said, we're not paying rent. And those that actually could afford to pay rent. So, and we've got a mix of tenants. We've got big corporates in our fund. We've got a lot of SMMEs. that really did need the support. So I think the biggest challenge for us has been kind of wearing the landlord hat and being very clinically minded in our approach and conversations with tenants around paying rent, but equally being sympathetic of what everyone is going through and where we assist. So we spent a lot of time trying to balance things out and say where we can help tenants, especially the smaller tenants, let's do that by providing, you know, different ways in which we structure the rental, give them rental concessions, you know, push out the rental, etc., but also managing our cash flow, because on the other end, we have lenders, we've got shareholders that
are
knocking down our door.
Want their money.
Yeah, a pound of flesh. Balancing that has really been interesting, I must say. But you know, my takeaway there is some of the assistance that we've given to some of our tenants and how they've really appreciated the support. And this is financial support.
Yeah.
And I think you realize that when people are faced with the reality of their businesses closing because they can't pay rent, it's a stark reality, and you really sympathize with where that individual is, because behind these businesses are individuals. It's the business owners,
employees,
it's their jobs, it's that whole value chain that almost disappears because you decide you're going to pull the plug and take away the building. So it's really considering what your role is in facilitating a process where you assist tenants, the people behind those tenants, to weather the storm. So for us, the transition has been fun. It's just managing those dynamics and dealing with, you know, some of the hostility from the big tenants that think they can almost use their power to enforce, you know, that they're not paying rental, etc. So yeah, it's the pressure.
It sounds very complex, as entrepreneurship would sound. But I think for people that don't know Izandla and people that don't know you, as I shared a little bit earlier, I think before people came onto the call, you and I met officially at Investec when you were still working there. And as I was saying, you were sort of a mentor, I felt, to me, just when I was feeling frustrated. And I think we had similar sort of things we were trying to navigate in that specific organization. But if you could just share more about your journey, but specifically how you moved from sort of corporate and how you jumped into the entrepreneurship ship, and why that was, and why your journey was different, because I think it was different.
Yeah, my journey in entrepreneurship has been very different. And I think that's the point. I think becoming an entrepreneur takes different shapes and form. It's not a, you know, it's not a one kind of package or solution for everyone. It comes in different ways. And I think for me, you know, my journey was very different in that I worked with Investec for a long time. I mean, I think you were there, you got there when I was there, and I always felt ancient in some of the conversations we were having, and almost envious when you did, you know, leave. I thought, what the hell am I still doing there? But in saying that, I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed my journey throughout that process. And then at a point, you know, just that corporate environment and some of the things that worked for me before just didn't work. And I thought, okay, there was an opportunity to establish a Black-owned, empowered real estate fund on the back of having some form of partnership with Investec. And you know, at the time, I think there was that opportunity in our industry because something like that. And I thought it's a match made in heaven, because from Investec's perspective, that made sense as a massive property player to be in the forefront of establishing something like that is massive, you know, massive leverage for them from a reputational perspective, and you know, the relationship with myself, so it makes sense. The timing at the time, I suppose, was not right, maybe for both me and Investec, and I decided to leave anyway. I thought.
Yeah. So when was this? 2015, 2016.
16,
yeah.
Yeah, so late 2016, it was difficult to leave. I think I took a year and a half to comprehend what that means for me. And I'm almost like a fixed mindset type of person. I like consistency and predictability to a certain extent. So for me, you know, grappling with the fact that I'm leaving an environment that is comfortable and has been good for me, etc., etc., and going into the unknown was very uncomfortable, but I knew I had to do it to get some form of growth personally, and I did. And at the time, we had established an asset management business with ex-colleagues, and I was kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But you know, the business was there, we had offices, etc. And I said, look, I'll be here for a period of time, actively involved, and let's see how, and almost trying to build something very similar to what I was trying to build with Investec. And then yeah, and I mean, we were working together, and the business is still there, it's still continuing. And then I had an opportunity to work with Airports Company. And again, that relationship was formed over past projects that we're trying to do with AXA. And it made sense. It was still property, still something I loved, still very much focused on property development. So that's where I transcended for a short period of time. And then suddenly Investec were like waking up to this whole idea of setting up this fund. And I kind of let go of that to a certain extent and thought, look, it's going to play itself out in a different way with maybe different partners, etc. And you know, then they gave me a call, and I was quite surprised because I thought, okay, we did go down this route to a certain extent, and
you didn't buy into it.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, let's, you know, see how it goes. And I, you know, that's, so the difference in my entrepreneurial journey is that I had an opportunity to build a business. Build a business with, that's Kazi. Sorry, my son.
This is part of, you
coming to get a phone to go play games. So, so yeah, so for me, it was, you know, I said to you, I'm quite conservative, fixed mindset, certainty, and risk for me is something I can't comprehend that much. So for me, it was almost like a perfect match. So you have an opportunity to build a business that makes sense and is aligned to who I am as that female in an industry that has been primarily male-dominated, white male-dominated, and really spoke to where I was in terms of what my career trajectory looked like. But on the other hand, I had almost a safety net because I was working with people that I knew. I was working with a brand that had significant credibility, and the chances of them letting this thing fail was slim.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, so and I had carte blanche to build this business and run it the way I want to. So it was a match made in heaven for me. And you know, fast forward, Izandla Property is established and a big hoo-ha, etc., etc. And then I crapped myself because then I realized, you know, I almost had I was almost like naive in thinking, okay, because people that I know, so I mean, the extent of support really is there, and the support that I deem to be necessary for me will be there, and it's going to be a smooth kind of cushioned process. And it was the opposite, right? So I found myself having responsibility to build a business, and I got the carte blanche, funny enough. You know, some big brothers that are behind certain businesses want to have control. And, you know, there were big decisions I had to make. And I remember the first thing I had to commit myself to was signing loan agreements with a bank and acquiring certain property. I thought, flip, this is a big deal. And, you know, there's no backstop. There was nobody else that was kind of saying, okay, no, it's okay to do this. And I thought, flip, if this thing falls apart, then it's on me.
For sure.
And that has been, I suppose, my journey of being responsible to build a business. And I think for me, what has been very difficult or challenging is how when I speak of Izandla, I can't separate myself from this business.
Sure. You are your business.
I am, and with the many challenges it comes with, the many incredible opportunities it comes with,
Sure.
it's me. And you know, when we go through challenges, it's my challenges personally. Sure. And when we're celebrating successes, it reflects on who I am as an individual. And I think the reason why I make that point is because I think as black professionals that go into entrepreneurship, Black women that are building businesses, there's an added burden because you are representing so much more than just your business. Agreed. Right?
Agreed. You're proving a point. I feel like you literally are like,
yeah, and you want to, right? Yeah, you want to prove a point. So, you know, somebody said to me, so look, if your business fails, does that mean you fail? And my first answer was like, yeah, that failed. And you know, they said, no, it doesn't mean you failed. It means the business failed. So it's kind of saying, in any ordinary course of building any business, if you're a white male, if you built a business and it failed, you haven't failed.
Yeah, move on.
Because you black female, if something fails in your hands, then it's your fault and it's on you, you know? So that's the added burden that I think
feel overwhelmed? Did you not feel overwhelmed? You know what I mean?
No, all the time. All the time. And yeah, so I think, you know, I continue to have Investec as a partner and a big brother, which has its pros and cons. You and I were kind of touching on that earlier. And you know, sometimes it's more difficult to have a big brother. I must say, there are times where I feel like, you know, if maybe I went out and I started building this business from scratch myself, it would have been easier. But there are challenges with that as well.
Sorry to cut you off, but for somebody then who's thinking about either going completely on their own, going completely on their own, or someone thinking about maybe having a conversation with a big brother, you know, what are the, not that you can, if you don't want to share the challenges, that's fine, but what are the things you think that they should sort of have or, you know, look out for or think about?
Yeah, so sure, for me, it's one, do your homework. I think for me, I was gonna say the first thing is understand what it is you actually want out of it.
Yeah.
Which is a key question, because I think we journey into this whole business ownership venture because of different reasons.
Yeah.
Some could be frustration because the corporate environment is just not speaking to who you are. It's not giving you the autonomy that you'd like to have to do certain things. And maybe it's just because you see certain opportunities in the market that don't allow you to pursue them if you remain in a corporate environment. You got to understand personally what you are giving up, you know, and I think primarily what you give up is the comfort of one, having the consistency of an income, but two, what you're giving up is the luxury to switch off. For me, like when you leave your work at the end of the day, it's a job, right? So you don't have to worry about whether. Yeah, like you kind of, you know, the business is going to be there, and if you don't have to do certain things, you know, you won't, or you'll do them.
For sure.
But you got to understand that what you're giving up is that freedom to switch off. And for me, that was a massive lesson throughout this process, because it was you're it all the time. You are it. Nobody else that's it. Nobody else that you can default your decisions to. And for me, that was freedom. And I realized when I suddenly was found, you know, having to make decisions and think about the business all the time, like every waking moment, you think, how do we do this better? And what is the challenge that we're facing? It is a freedom that you are letting go of, because you are working 1,000 times harder to build something. And it's worth it, right, in the end. And I think comprehend what potentially failure means to you in in building the business.
As in if it doesn't work out. So like if now you've obviously launched this business, yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, and failure doesn't culminate in the collapse of a business.
For sure.
Failure be, failing to reach certain milestones as you are building this business.
Sure.
And how hard you are on yourself in comprehending those failures. So it's not failure of a business. That's not what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
But along the journey of building the business, there will be disappointments because you haven't achieved this in a certain period of time, or you've made the wrong decisions. That have cost the business certain things.
Yeah.
It could be hiring decision, having the right people in the business. It could be
so when you are feeling overwhelmed and you have these challenges that you're going through, what's the one thing that you do? So I mean, even in lockdown, and maybe you felt overwhelmed and pressured, and your clients want this and that, and your kids are coming for their phones, hubby's also coming for love and kisses. When you're feeling overwhelmed, what's the one thing in a day that you have to do, or that you do?
So I think the one thing that has continued to keep me grounded is my relationship with God, and that I'm a believer, and my solace in just making sense of the madness and the overwhelm and all of that is finding time to chat to God and kind of say, listen, I'm not coping, like things are falling apart. I don't know how to, like what the freak is going on.
Yeah.
And we all have those different places that we go to that nourish our spirits.
For sure.
Even if you're exhausted mentally, even if you've got the physical pressure that's coming at you, for me, that is the one thing that has been a constant in my life, most of my life, and more so during this time. And it's almost, it's my space where my kids are not there, my husband's not there.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about them in that space. It's just me and God. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I don't have the patience to have the conversation. Sometimes I'm upset and
I hear you. Just grab a glass.
That is, listen, lots of glasses. Lots.
But just I mean that's but just the work you're doing at the Women Property Network, briefly, just before we get into questions, why is that important to you, and just some advice you can share with women. What's holding us back? What's making us doubt ourselves? Why do we not progress as much as we, have we got imposter syndrome? I don't know, so the work you're doing obviously at the Women's Property Network, and just some advice for the women.
Sure. So WPN is a platform that was established, I think almost 20 years ago. And really the mandate of the WPN was to, and is still, to, through different initiatives, advance the meaningful participation of women in the real estate industry in different ways. So property is a complex value chain. And it provides an opportunity for women to participate in many different segments of property. And the mandate of the WPN is to really partner with the industry in different ways. So partner with big business, partner with advocacy groups to drive the gender diversity agenda. Okay. And I don't know if you guys are hearing background noise. My kids have increased the volume. Anyway.
These are the times we live in.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that has been the mandate of the WP, and it's become more complex, right? This gender diversity issue has become more complex as women continue to participate. In the different sectors. And I think for us, the challenge or the focus has been how we remain relevant to our stakeholders, which is our female members and the different partners that are driving the same agenda. And I think for me, what continues to be important is driving that meaningful participation and economic participation of women. I think, and I'm getting to the second part of your question around why is it that women are still struggling to transcend into these male-dominated environments. But I think what's important is understanding the various stakeholders in this ecosystem of advancing women. It's not just women. So, you know, I think we all understand what it is we want. I think your question around what is holding us back, are we holding ourselves back? No, I think we've gone past the notion of women being shy or not believing in themselves enough to push themselves forward, women not being adequately skilled to pursue certain opportunities. That for me is a farce. That's out the window. It's not a valid point anymore in my context, because I think the conversation now is women are there and women have done the work to be able to drive certain segments of sectors, to be able to play in key roles, you know, in various industries, whether they are business owners, whether they are leaders of big business. You know, we're there and we certainly have the skill. I think the question is what the other stakeholders in this ecosystem are doing to facilitate that process. And that is the question we should be asking as women, not the question of whether we are enough to be able to participate. It's saying other stakeholders that are accountable, i.e. men, i.e. you know, some of these structures that sit in these corporates that either enable or disable the participation of, and the role that they should be playing in advancing, you know, diversity, gender diversity in ways. So if you are an entrepreneur, what stakeholders are we engaging that aren't women necessarily, but that you need to influence in order for you to get business, right? So, I think the support that has been provided for women primarily has been, if you're a business owner, for enterprise development story. I mean, again, you know, we've done that ad nauseum, and women know what to do. So women have the skills, right? Women want access to opportunities. They want to participate economically in this ecosystem. Women
will drive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So enough of the enterprise development stories, enough of business development. We're ready to show you what we can do. So procure products from me. You know, put me in that boardroom where I can influence the direction around gender diversity and the commercial growth of the business. You know, so
easier said than done, hey, my friend, I won't lie.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. It is, and you get exhausted.
Yeah, but it's a truth we need to face. I do want to, I want to give the ladies some
questions.
ESCOM tries to run our lives. Give some time for some questions. So if you do have a question, could you raise your hand if you know how to use that functionality, or you could just unmute yourself. That's also fine if you don't know how to use the hand. Let's see if anybody raised their hands at the moment. Someone's unmuted, I think. Oh, that's still you, Noni. Any questions, ladies? Questions, comments? Are you looking to go into entrepreneurship, or corporates is still treating you well? Property questions, mom questions, lockdown questions? Come on, guys. I know you've got questions. I know you've got questions.
I see Tato's there. I see, and I know Tato.
Yes, Tato, we're going to pick on you. Maybe you've got a question or a comment. Tato Mohale.
Shame. Sorry for putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
So much pressure. I don't have a question.
A comment?
But I think what I would ask is, it's a property related question. Since you mentioned the mandate of WPN and I'm a student chairperson. I would say, what do you think is in terms of, I think my main thing and challenge in terms of this whole property thing and the dominance of women is access. How do we continue to bridge that gap of accessibility? Because that's the main thing. Students after graduating, they don't know who to talk to, they don't know where to go. So how do we continue to improve that? How do we match that gap of accessibility?
Yeah, Tato, I think, I mean, you raised something that is quite important for the WPN in building the student chapters and the education trust. And really the purpose there is to ensure that the transition of students from varsity coming into the industry is certainly much easier than, you know, some of the experiences that we've had. It is a daunting transition, and I think for me, the only way you navigate getting access to anything, whether you're a student going into this specific industry, whether you are a young graduate or young professional that's wanting to achieve career growth over time, is relationships. I promise you, I think for me, you don't get paid to build relationships, right? And I think this is where the disconnect is. But I think the value in building and intentionally building the right relationships. So you got to do a bit of research in terms of who it is you want to build those relationships with that will ultimately get you to some form of connection and provide a channel for access, because those are the people that are playing different roles in different segments of the sector. And sometimes we think that some of these people are inaccessible. And I've really found that it's quite easy to connect with some people if you've obviously got a clear intention why it is you want to connect, and not just say, hey, I want to be your LinkedIn, you know, buddy, or you want to, it's just, you got to be intentional about it. You got to know why it is you are wanting to connect with certain people. And it is strategic. I think you build relationships strategically for them to facilitate you getting access to different things. And I think that's okay. Sometimes we feel like, you know, doing that is selfish or malicious or whatever. That's what men do all the time. They don't just build professional relationships because they like people. They do it intentionally because their outlook is that, flip, if that person has a specific role they're playing in the industry, they could potentially get me to talk to a certain individual or get access to a certain company that I want to go work for, etc., etc. So the only way you do that for me, really, Tato, is building those strategic relationships, which take time. So as you're building your career or you're finishing your studies, you should equally be driving a process where you are trying to build those strategic relationships that hold you in good stead, you know, over time, and be able to navigate your journey in accessing different opportunities.
Yeah, that seems, I think, even just generally as entrepreneurs, it just seems that network or access to people is like it's a common sort of challenge, eh? I saw Puleng wrote a comment. I'll ask her to explain a little bit further, but her comment was she wants to start a B&B, but doesn't know where to start. So I'm not sure if it's mainly the B&B aspect you want to know more about, or maybe acquiring the property or starting it up. Puleng, do you want to explain a bit more? Puleng? Okay. So Puleng's question was, okay, she's unmuted.
Sorry, I was still muted, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm passionate about hospitality, but at the moment, I'm trying to complete my studies. So I thought maybe I need to finish one thing before starting the other, but that's what I want to do. But at the moment, I haven't done enough research to know where to actually start. So I was thinking that maybe Nonhlanhla has an idea, can advise.
Okay. I think, Puleng, the question I would want to ask you, and something maybe you need to ask yourself in determining whether you want to start a business, and a business in, you know, opening a B&B is why you want to do that. You know, is there a specific opportunity you've seen? Are you passionate about that area? You know, so I think you've got to go through a process where you ask yourself why it is you want to go that route. And I think the question around whether you start that process now or after you finish your studies, I think for me, you know, juggling different balls at the same time is something that women do very well. And if there's a specific window of opportunity that you see in this space, I wouldn't wait in starting to do the work to see whether that's a route that you want to take. And the only way you'll find the answer of whether this is the right route to take is actually going into doing the work around, you know, research, you know, the area in which you want to go into, and, you know, and maybe find someone that is in that specific space. And I find this is a very effective way to understand that particular business or that particular industry, is almost, you know, shadowing somebody which this is their lived experience. And I think you learn far than you would when you are almost theoretically going through the process of learning how to put something like this together. So in maybe making your decision, I would encourage you to maybe find someone that is in that space, and walk the journey with them for a while in determining, you know, whether that's what you want to do, and certainly how you would go about doing it, because that experience for me is invaluable.
Yeah, agreed. Puleng, does that answer?
Okay, no, yeah, no, thanks for the advice. And as you said, that juggling the two might make me even more productive, because really this is what I'm passionate about. And I find myself doing it in my house without, you know, financial benefit, but I don't feel bad about doing it, because that make me feel fulfilled. Yeah, the idea of shadowing someone is what I never thought of, but I'll consider that and find someone. Thank you so much.
Sure. And good luck, Puleng.
And Noni, just
Thank you.
Just talking about people that you could shadow or that you could sort of learn from. Do you have a mentor, or do you have a couple of mentors?
Not.
So I have two things. I have people that are mentors in my life. I have people that have been sponsors in my life, and I think the two are different. And you know, around the mentorship story, for me, I've had different mentors along, you know, different journeys of my life. And I think whoever you choose to be your mentor can come and go in your life, and that's okay, because you change as you go through your journey, and equally that individual changes. So the relevance of having specific mentors along different journeys in your life, you know, is important. And I think the type of mentors that I've had have been almost unpredictable. So I think in my earlier journey in property, I had white male Jewish mentors, which
that's not a bad thing. So that's not a bad thing. I mean,
it's a bit of an anomaly.
If there's anyone you're gonna learn from, it's Jewish people, right?
Yeah, well, you got to learn the good stuff.
I see Zanella had a question. Before I unmuted, before I spoke. Zanella?
Sure.
Yes, so thank you. Thank you, Nonhlanhla. Your story is very inspiring. I think a lot of people don't consider this type of entrepreneurship. So you've opened some eyes to that possibility. You know, things like enterprise development. There's a lot of big companies out there that could benefit from an enterprise development type relationship, where they are partnering with a Black female company that is starting out, and it's a win-win because, you know, on the one hand, they up their score, and then on your side, you get exposure to that level of clients, you get exposure to professionalism, etc. My question, however, is why you? So I'm fascinated by people that seem to have that X factor. Having worked at Investec myself, I know the level of excellence that is required to do well at Investec. So excellence aside, that's a given, right? So besides excellence, why do you think you were the one that, when, you know, Stephen Kosef and them were deciding who to approach for this opportunity, why do you think they approached you? What was it about your tenure? What was it about your achievements throughout that made it easy for them to come to you versus the next excellent young Black woman?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for that question,
Okay.
Zanele. And thank you for giving me context around your journey at Investec, because that helps. So, you know, I think for me, and maybe, you know, you shared that experience while being at Investec. And I've spoken about this and I reconfirm it. I think for me, what did it for them, put aside whatever technical ability, et cetera, and achievements, it's the comfort in knowing the person, and having built a relationship with the person over a period of time. And for me, I think the reason why I've endured the tenure that I have with Investec is not because of Investec. It really, really honestly is because of the people I've built relationships with over time, and not relationships based on my performance or their performance, but just relationships that happen. And I was very intentional about it. Like I said, you know, with Tato's question, I was intentional about it because that's how Investec operates. And Zanele, you would know. And I think some of the frustration that would come from people that don't look like the people that are heading up Investec or whatever, and you hear about this relationship as currency all the time, but you don't know where to start because you don't have people that look like you, that have the same background, etc. And that's been a challenge, I think, for somebody like Investec. But equally for me, I saw an opportunity to build relationships with people that don't know anything about me or my background as a Black female individual, etc., etc. But I knew that they had a role to play in my journey and my growth. And obviously I didn't know how things would play themselves out, but I promise you, with the process of them kind of thinking of who this jockey would be, if you want to call it, what did it, because I think they did speak to other people that were out in the market, etc. I know they went through that process. What was just having a sense of comfort that they know this person, and you know, even if the journey is going to be hard, they are latching onto the fact that they know Nonhlanhla and they've worked with her, and you know, have gone through certain challenges, and they know the person behind the required skill. So I think for me, that you want to call it an X factor, I suppose, is something that that did it for me. And outside of this context, for me, that's just my strategy. I want to build relationships with the person. And even if, you know, in 10 years' time, that relationship makes sense, then that's fine. But the starting point is, are we going to build a relationship? Well, we're not going to be best friends, but, you know, there must be something behind just the clinical work that we are doing or that connects us. And I promise you that has held me in good stead most of my career and most of my professional and personal journey, in fact.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Very great insights. Thanks, ladies.
That was a good
Sure.
So we have one more question just to wrap up the evening. If anybody's got something that's on their mind, or we're gonna pick on somebody else.
So I mean, seeing that I like putting people on the spot, I mean, two of my very close friends, and one is family.
Yeah, put them on the spot.
They've been quietly listening and commenting on the side chats.
Yeah, put them on the spot. Put them on the spot.
It would be great to hear from them. Amanda Nokatleho.
Amanda, and turn on your camera so we can see your pretty faces. Who's there? Amanda. Amanda. Is she there?
She gone.
Hi, it's Kateho. Unfortunately, I can't turn on my camera. But I think, Nonhlanhla, you know how super proud we are of your achievements and inspired. And I think having been there throughout the journey with you, seeing how, you know, how hard you've worked. And I like the fact that you said you've been intentional, even with the relationships that you've been building. And I think from the beginning, you had some idea of where you want to take your career and have put in the hard work that is required. I think from my side, I can say what I most admire is just the hard work, the tenacity, and also just breaking the ceiling and going, you know, into an industry that I think people in our age group never even knew that you could build such a career and even become an entrepreneur in that industry. So, and also the work that you're doing with the university students and the graduates, I think it is great because then you're opening up the doors and just letting them see and understand a bit of corporate that some of us didn't have the opportunity to go through, and you just found yourself in corporate and had to navigate your way into that. But if you had people who had gone before you, I think it would have made the journey easier for some of us and may even be a bit further in our careers than where we are. So continue the hard work, and especially with the Women's Property Network. I think you're doing great work there. Continue, and we are proud of you.